In both cases, you have young men who are willing to fight, who are willing to face fear, who are willing to put themselves in harm's way, who are willing to push their limits. And in doing so, they experience some sort of seminal injury. They experience some sort of physical, emotional, spiritual, psychological injury. And in coming home from war or in retiring from the NFL, they seek healing. And in seeking healing, they go to the sources that our culture has available to them. So they go to whatever their medical industry provides, whatever their insurance companies provide. They go to the VA to seek mental health services. In the context of my observation in my journey, my own version of this, what I observe is that many people are often very disappointed, very hurt, feel very unheard, very unvalued. In fact, I would say most people feel sort of preyed upon by the medical industry, not the doctors, not the good people that are trying to provide services, but the industry of things, whether it is the industry of the VA system, the industry of the military, the industry of the NFL. And it's not necessarily to disparage against those industries. It's to call for accountability and to be willing to look at those industries and understand why are people, when these are the go-to services that these guys have available to them, why do they choose to seek an alternative path? What is it about their journey that finds them feeling more depressed, more anxious, more exhausted, more frustrated, more unheard, more helpless and hopeless? What is it about their journey that finds them deciding they need to seek something else out? And in my observation, in my experience, it's they feel like they're not being heard. They feel like they're being doled out medication that hurts them more. They feel like they're being made to stand in line longer than they should. They feel like they are experiencing a lot of times more harm than good. And it leads to a sense of learned helplessness, which is no matter how much I try, I'm just not getting what I need. No matter how much I try, I just feel frustrated, hurt, like I'm suffering more. So in the context of our story, these warriors seek out healing experiences outside the confines and outside the context of what is traditionally offered in Western allopathic medicine, or perhaps in the industry of medicine in the West, whether it's for our military or our veterans or just all of us. They get fed up, they get frustrated. In the context of our story, these leaders, these thought leaders, these open-hearted, open-minded warriors are willing to seek alternatives. They're willing, as they were willing in their own journey, in their own sort of hero's journey, they were willing to go outside the confines of what society had to offer, and they were willing to push their limits. So they also did that in their journey of healing. And in our story, a lot of them are discovering healing in two broad spaces. I would say there's a cultural renaissance taking place in this. On one hand, you have, and in the context of our story, primarily men, you have men that are seeking healing through committed group experiences, group retreats, like the Save a Warrior program that we're exploring and documenting. You have groups of men and women in the Save a Warrior program who are going through a 3-day experience of initiation, of sharing their unshareable problems, of being vulnerable in the space where they are mutually acknowledging each other and willing to open their hearts and their minds and willing to lay it all on the line and willing to shed their tears. And it's having gone through it myself, it's an exceptional way to access our deepest trauma, our deepest grief, our deepest pain that seems to be so difficult to access in more traditional therapy or medicine. And so you're seeing a renaissance of group initiation practices. How about you're experiencing a renaissance of people having a deep desire to heal together? Part of a big part of trauma, a big part of injury is that we become separated from ourselves and from others. So we are alone. We perceive that we are alone in our suffering. And suffering, in the way we cope with suffering, and the way our society works, is we're not encouraged to come together. We hide. We run and hide. We hide our shame. So we become more isolated, more depressed, more fearful, more angry, more anxious in our suffering. And one major facet of this film that we're navigating and that we're exploring is people coming together and being vulnerable together and providing spaces together where they can share everything that they need to share, and they can let it all out, and they can grieve, and they can become committed to a more focused, deliberate, heart-centered way of being. On the other side of this journey, you have people who are rediscovering what we call psychedelic medicine, what some people call entheogenic medicine. There are different words. People use different words. There's a lot of debate about the words they use. But these are substances that are natural in the case of ibogaine and mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms. And there are derivatives of these things that are lab created, like LSD, for example, or MDMA, which is not really a psychedelic, but it's an empathogen. It's kind of in this category. But you have people who are willing to go outside the confines of the legal structures and the cultural structures of the past 50 years. And they are rediscovering not just these substances, but ceremonies and group experiences led by truly wise, deeply trained, deeply experienced people. And it is in the context of these entheogenic ceremonies or experiences where they are able to open up to a degree that is vastly beyond what can be described. They are able to open up, to release, to receive knowledge, to access knowledge, and to have an experience with the medicine and with each other that goes far beyond what we believe we can achieve through traditional therapy or medicine. Anybody that has ventured into that space understands it's really ineffable. It's very difficult to talk about what one actually experiences in a psilocybin experience or an ibogaine experience or a 5-MeO-DMT experience. When done properly in a container of safe, strong, well-trained people, these experiences tend to allow us to open our hearts, open our mind, to access emotions and access memories and access knowledge that seems to be far beyond what we are able to achieve in our normal day-to-day services and experiences. There are many who would argue that you can achieve this through dedicated meditation or dedicated meditation and yoga and things like that. Indeed, I believe you can. But most people in our modern world are not going to dedicate themselves to a lifestyle of meditation, for example. But really the arc of our film project is young men go out into the world to seek experience, to seek achievement, to follow their dreams, to do what they believe they're supposed to do, to serve, sometimes to run away from pain, to run away from home. And in going to war, or in pursuing their dream of playing in the NFL, they experience some form of physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual injury. And in experiencing these injuries, they seek help. Naturally, they're suffering, they're in pain, they seek help. And too often in the stories of these people, the form of help that is offered to them in our society only tends to make it worse. The medications they receive tend to numb their pain, to simply turn them into somewhat of a zombie, an emotional zombie, and it's not getting at the root issue. It's not getting at the seminal injury. It's not getting at the core issue. It's just masking it. It's nothing more than a mask, than a Band-Aid. It's not healing anything. It's just suppressing the emotions that are emerging because of the deeper injury, the deeper pain. So in seeking help, our heroes in this story experience more pain, more disappointment, more frustration, more anger, more sadness, secondary trauma to what they experienced in childhood growing up or what they experienced in combat. And those who are the leaders, those who are open-hearted and open-minded and brave enough to do so, end up seeking help outside the confines of what our culture has to offer. They end up challenging the cultural norms. They end up challenging the cultural legal system. Again, the limits and the cultural ideas and structures that have limited the access to these substances for really thousands of years in the context of the USA, the past 50 or 60 years after the Nixon administration. And in seeking these experiences, not just psychedelic, not just plant medicine, but also in seeking these group healing experiences, what our characters are finding is a much deeper, much grander, much more holistic, much more fulfilling, not just form of healing, but form of transformation that is allowing them to shed layers and layers and layers of trauma, of pain, of grief, of stories, really to shed the layers that have been accumulated over the course of their lives, and to rediscover the essence, the spirit, the sense of self that they always were, and to do that together, and to be able to see that in one another, and to see that in nature, and to see God in all things, essentially. And to get even beyond the language of needing religion or a 3-letter word to describe God. Having experiences that allow them to recognize that we are all of one consciousness, we are all of one being, and we get to have our own unique individual experiences, but that we are indeed part of this great ocean of being. So this film is about healing. This film series is about healing. It's about being. It's about healing and being in community. It's about all of the cultural history and cultural barriers that contribute to our collective injuries and that contribute to our separation and our division and our fear and our politics and all these things that are used to prey upon our generational trauma by those sort of megalomaniacal people in the world who are willing to prey upon, consciously prey upon our generational ideas and our generational fears and our generational structures and all these things that we have been born into. This film is about healing and growing and transformation. And it's about healing and growing and transformation through the lens of our warriors. In this case, through the lens of our veterans, our combat veterans, and some NFL players who have sort of been in the trenches of their experiences and have experienced great injury in the context of their experience and have a parallel experience in seeking help to a lot of our veterans. So it's exploring this culturally. It's exploring what the wizards of our culture, it's called Warriors and Wizards. So it's exploring what those sort of thought leaders in our culture who are willing to also seek out this healing and seek out this knowledge and seek out this elixir, and who are willing to provide it. It's a really wonderful story. It's a great experience to get to be a part of it. It really is the fulfillment of a couple decades of life experience that have culminated in me being willing to be open-hearted, open-minded, and just being so fortunate to be a part of a culture of people, men and women, who have been willing to seek out these great healing experiences and have been willing to lock elbows with each other and have been willing to provide these services to others, and inevitably who truly believe in helping to lift each other up, in helping to alleviate suffering, not just to prey upon suffering as our industries and our politics do, but to ease people through their suffering, to guide people through their suffering, to provide a pathway for people to grow and transform through their suffering and to come home to each other, to God, to a more collective sense of being. I had to stumble my way there today, but that's really, I think, all I wanted to say for today. Thank you so much for listening.